Good afternoon. I'm Liz Powell, and I am the co-founder of the Women's Digital Health Network. My wonderful co-founders, who I'm going to have to pass to right now. Bethany, we're going to take it from here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here with us, everyone. I'm Bethany Corbin, as was mentioned, co-founder for the Women's Digital Health Network. I'm also an attorney by background. I have the first law firm that focuses exclusively on helping women's digital health innovators bring their products to life and get their products to market faster, but in a way that is hopefully going to set them up for success as they grow and scale. And in my work as a lawyer in this field, I've come across a lot of scenarios in which the policy regulations that are coming out on digital health don't necessarily mirror what we need to have happen to spur and encourage innovation in a meaningful manner. And so that was one of the factors that led me to collaborate with Liz and Netta to really come together to figure out what we could do in this space in order to propel women's digital health forward in a way that merges the public and private considerations for digital health policy, but does not have the negative impact of stifling innovation while still protecting consumer interests. So that's really where I come into this picture, and where my interest lies is really helping to facilitate forward growth and movement in the regulatory landscape, because we all know regulations are coming in this space, and also to be able to do it with an eye towards encouraging innovation and making sure that we're considering and promoting all of the relevant interests for the women's digital health ecosystem. I'm also the co-founder and CEO of Innovation, which is helping to build that women's digital health ecosystem, ensuring that we have collaboration amongst founders, clinicians, scientists, investors, et cetera, so that we're really considering the entire ecosystem when bringing products to market and ensuring that we're meeting consumer needs while also developing products that are going to be scientifically accurate and clinically usable to help address some of the clinical inaccuracies that we have in products today, and also ensuring that what we put on the market is going to be safe and usable for consumers. And so, Netta, I will turn it over to you for introductions.
Thank you, Bethany and Liz. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Super excited to be here and sharing this morning with you. Appreciate your time. So, Bethany said it so well, but I'll do a quick intro of why we're here. I'll do a quick intro of me. I come from the regulatory background space, in the medical device space, medtech space. Digital health really stems from technologies that touch our lives in all ways. Very different to the pharma space, because you could go to see a physician and never get, prescribed a drug or biologic, but you're definitely coming into contact with medical devices. And now in this space where how we access healthcare, moving to healthcare at the home, being connected in every way, wearables, there's opportunities for us to really kind of utilize the data that's being collected, these technologies, to really improve health outcomes. So I work with companies to help them move their products from concept through to commercialization, understanding what evidence generation and data they need to support safety and effectiveness and get their products to market. Yeah, I'm sure within the digital health space, a lot about software as a medical device, and the promise and potential of software there. So I'm really excited to be here and looking forward to engaging with you, learning more about what you're working with and innovating in this space, and how we can move that forward to ensure that policies, programs, regulations are meaningful, balanced, to not stifle innovation, but to actually promote getting that in a meaningful manner to patients. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you both so much. So again, Liz Powell, and I'm the founder of G2G Consulting, which I created after working on Capitol Hill. I was a legislative director for a couple different members, and learned a lot about how government works, especially on Capitol Hill. And now as a consultant, we do a lot of lobbying and advocacy work in the health space broadly, across biosciences. And in the past 6 years, we saw a lot happening in women's health in particular, these gaps that weren't being addressed, these innovators trying to address those gaps. And so, as we all know, I have said repeatedly, 2024 is the year of women's health. There's tremendous opportunity to come together to really shape and influence policies that are being formed, and especially in digital health. There's been so much innovation in digital health space. And so I was very excited to team up with my colleagues, Bethany and Netta, to establish this women's digital health network, because we want to come together to make sure we're tracking what's happening, we can shape what's happening, and that there is a network among CEOs, entrepreneurs, clinicians, people who are passionate about women's digital health. And so that's what we are launching today with all of you. So I think we can go to the next slide. So this is our mission. So the Women's Digital Health Network is committed to driving meaningful and innovative advancement in healthcare through sustained communications and collaborations with regulatory agencies, Congress, the women's digital health industry, and nonprofits. So that is what we're all about. I'm sure you've seen our website, but it's womensdigitalhealthnetwork.com. Make sure you check us out. And with that, I'd love to pass it back to Bethany.
Perfect. Thanks, Liz. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we're envisioning as part of the Women's Digital Health Network. And this will kind of set the stage for the broader discussion that we want to have with you shortly, so that we can talk about what you want to see out of a Women's Digital Health Network, the key issues that you are also spotting when it comes to regulatory and congressional advancements in women's digital health, and what's holding you or clients that you know back. So really what we are focused on, as I mentioned before, is bridging that public-private divide and making sure that we are working with regulators and government agencies to help drive change and those regulatory policies that'll benefit both consumers and companies. As Liz mentioned, we are focused uniquely on women's digital health policy. So within that broader women's health category, right, we are focused on digital health for a couple of reasons. And the first is the fact that when we think about digital health, there's a lot of unique considerations when it comes to, for instance, privacy, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. We've seen a growth in the remote patient monitoring space, right? Things like that that are unique within the healthcare space for digital health. So that's really the space in which we're focused, and we're focusing on women's digital health, meaning, right, any type of digital health that impacts anyone who is identifying as female. So it could be things like femtech, which has really started to boom in the past couple of years, but it could also be different types of digital health products that address conditions that are unique to women or that impact women disproportionately, or that just may, have a different, a diagnostic tool for women, right? Symptomologies, those types of things. So at a high level, that's really where we're fitting into some of the current initiatives that are occurring in the women's health field. We're also really trying to foster and identify collaboration opportunities between women's digital health sector, the regulatory bodies, and the lawmakers. And what that means is we're going to be an active voice on Capitol Hill and before these regulatory agencies to make sure that we are driving policy that's going to be effective, but also address the needs of consumers and the diverse women's health stakeholders in this women's digital health industry in a way that does not stifle innovation. We plan to do that through various different means, right, which could include letter writing campaigns, drafting comments, getting before and testifying before agencies and congressional representatives, and making sure that we are making our voices heard on the Capitol Hill. We'll also be developing those kind of public-private partnerships to advance women's digital health innovation. We really want to avoid that top-down regulatory effort that we see with a lot of different industries. And having worked in healthcare for many years, I have seen this occur where we know the regulation's coming and we allow the regulators to kind of impose that top-down approach without the voices of consumers, healthcare organizations and agencies, device manufacturers, and the other relevant stakeholders. And we get an outcome that's not necessarily optimal for enhancing innovation, and that doesn't really address all of the consumer needs in a way that works for manufacturers, product developers, and marketing teams. And so that's really where we want to come in and make sure that we are having a voice in driving this regulation forward, making sure that we're helping to tailor where those pain points are, and making sure that the regulation that comes out is going to be meaningful on all of the different sides. As part of this effort, we're really also focused on educating government and agency officials. We want them to know what the key challenges and pain points that the women's digital health industry is experiencing, so that they can begin to think through what those pain points are and how we might solve them together, rather than having them necessarily develop, regulation that is, overarching or too comprehensive, or not necessarily addressing the specific pain points that we have in our industry. And so we, as members of this industry, all of you included, we're able to understand and really dive into the unique nuances that exist within our industry, and we know the pain points better than anyone else. And so we need to make sure that we are getting those pain points and those solutions in front of the government agencies. We are also focused on developing consistent messaging about women's digital health that's going to resonate with regulators. And as I said, really making sure that we're championing the importance of women's digital health on Capitol Hill. As Liz mentioned, this is, the year of women's health, and we want to make sure that that momentum doesn't get lost, but also that women's digital health policy makes a mark and really does so in a way that's not going to lead to the exclusion of women's digital health products, right, or the stifling of innovation, which can so often occur when there's not those public-private collaborations and partnerships that exist. So how are we going to do this? Well, we're doing this through our Women's Digital Health Network, and that is why we need your support as well. So we do offer membership options in which what you're going to get out of this is the ability to participate in our advocacy efforts, the ability to sign on, for instance, to our letter writing campaigns, potentially get in front of these agencies to testify and talk about the pain points that we have identified. You'll get an opportunity to really work with us to start to help us also understand what pain points you're seeing in this industry, to work collaboratively so that we're able to push those types of pain points, but also initiatives forward on your behalf on Capitol Hill. You'll have access to key decision makers in digital health in Washington, D.C. As Liz mentioned, we're going to be really focused on tracking all of the current and emerging laws and regulatory policies that can have an impact on women's digital health care, making sure that our members get access to that information, having a space for them to really, collaborate, communicate about what this means, practically speaking, for women's digital health companies and nonprofits. An opportunity to really exchange ideas and collaborate with the national leaders to shape policies impacting women's digital health. And I'll turn it over as well to Nada to really kind of chime in on some of the other reasons and benefits of joining.
Yep, starting them young is a reason. So my daughter's joining me. Thanks for your understanding. But she's eager to say hello and learn about digital health. She's a female as well. So no, I think, Bethany, you covered it so well. And the whole point is you can't do it alone, and every voice matters. And also just wanted to quickly address, I see that the chat is disabled and you can't answer your questions, but Maddie kicked us off with a wonderful first question asking about, does this impact reimbursement policy? Yeah, because it has to, right? And it has to be the entire ecosystem, and it's not just one single player. So I think, yeah, Liz is typing in, I see her, and totally agree. And that's why it's this public-private partnership approach. And that's why it's the voice of the patient that matters and needs to be shaping these policies and informing them. And I'll speak more closely to the FDA piece because that's where I come from and work closely with them. They are very open to hearing from patients, hearing from consumers, hearing from industry to make sure that what they're creating and what they're doing actually makes sense. Their mission is first in the world of most importance to patients, getting devices and products first in the world of most important to patients and public health. So they have many different avenues that we'll discuss and hopefully bring speakers from FDA, leaders within there to share their perspectives and to have an opportunity to hear from you, the innovators, the folks actually doing the legwork and in the industry and feeling the pain points and seeing the opportunities to come to bear. So really trying to create this community where we're all supporting each other. And as the tide rises, all boats rise, and we're moving all in the same direction. So we're super excited to be having the discussion again. She starts at an early age, but that's part of it. And that's part of this first kickoff, in actually to hear from you in terms of what is most useful for you. What is the reality that you're living day to day? And sometimes there might be no pain points, which is great. And we can get together and continue to learn and share best practices. But sometimes there's a true reality and we need to put a lot of energy, effort, and voice behind it. So those are part of it. And I'm super excited. You see this beautiful face, apart from my daughter, Mia Keys, who joined us, and I'm really excited to be able to introduce her. So Mia Keys, as you can see from her bio, which just blows my mind for such a young and driven and passionate young lady. She's the Federal Affairs Director of Hologic, and that's a global medical innovations and women's health company. She also serves as a DC Commissioner for Women. Mia was formerly the Chief of Staff and Health Policy Advisor to Congresswoman Robin Kelly. And she was also the inaugural Health Equity Policy and Advocacy Director of the American Medical Association Center for Health Equity. Wow, inaugural. Mia has been a health researcher in South Africa and the US, so she brings global insights as well on always continuous learning and development, and has been a health researcher and was also a Fulbright Fellow to Indonesia. The National Minority Quality Forum recognized Mia as a 40 under 40 leader in minority health. She holds her Master's of Arts in Medical Sociology from Vanderbilt University, where she was also a Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Health Policy Fellow. So you see a lot of health policy, health equity. This is the lady. And Health Policy Fellow through the Memory Medical College. She's now also a doctoral candidate at George Washington University, and her dissertation is focusing on health equity policy and augmented intelligence, AI. Mia is also a creative nonfiction writer and has training from the University of Oxford, my hometown, UK. Oxford. And she lives in DC and is also a mom to a son of 3 years old, right? So Mia, we are so grateful and happy and excited to have you join us. And these are the folks and leaders within the space that we'd like to introduce to the community and have us partake and collaborate and engage with. So thank you, and turning it over to you.
No, I really appreciate being here. I'm so very excited for what you all are doing through this new organization. And not only that, but you're so thoughtful between the three of you in terms of really filling gaps with respect to what is really needed for today. But also, I feel like this effort speaks to what has been needed for so very long historically. And so that's the first thing I want to say. I really appreciate your vision, and I'm so very just driven and uplifted to be a part of this effort in whatever capacity is best. Nada, I think it's also so very necessary that your daughter is here today. It's not at all a coincidence. I think it's also just a reminder of why this work is necessary beyond the moment, right? Each of you has to some extent talked about the significance of women's health and digital health, those two intersections really filling out a woman across her lifetime, but this also refers to what happens to people who are becoming women, and this will affect our progeny for years and years and years to come. This very full moment in history. And speaking of history, I am a researcher by training, a whole nerd, and so it's really it's really, I think, incumbent to frame this conversation with respect to digital health and women's health in an historical context, right? Because while these efforts are quite novel, while they were certainly in a lot of ways born on the back of crises, COVID-19 really showed the world in a new and compelling way what was necessary in terms of the needs of people across America, across the world, and how it's been so unique, particularly for women who for so long have not been recognized as in the fulsome way. In the clinical world, in the traditional clinical sense, but then also within research context and historically, so we can talk about where women's health was even born. I come from, as was mentioned, I spent a lot of time, I worked at the AMA, and one of the things that we were doing through the Center for Health Equity was just really building up an awareness, a national consciousness with respect to where medicine was born in general. And with respect to women's health, gynecological health in particular, in the 1880s, was born out of procedures that were extremely, talk about pain points, extremely painful for women, particularly enslaved women, who on their, no pun intended, on their backs was born women's health practices. And that's not news for probably most, if not all of you here on this call. But it's really important to remember that what you're doing today harkens back to not just moving forward with respect to 21st century medicine, but really hopefully will provide salve for those pain points that are historically born. And we can even look at more recent times in terms of the 1950s, where we had all kinds of work related to cervical health and being just another expression of women's health, and that being born from spaces of non-consent with respect to Henrietta Lacks. And now we do have really great science that was born, again, because a woman was really very instrumental in developing scientific processes that were novel, that were innovative, but unfortunately were not done with her consent. And then now we move into the 1990s, where women and also minoritized people, racially minoritized people, were not included in clinical trials. And it wasn't until the early 1990s when we had the first Women's Health Initiative under the NIH, which became policy but didn't become law until 1993, with the Women and Minorities in Clinical Trials Act. And it wasn't, I mean, 1993, I was born before then, maybe five years before then. Yeah, no, 6 years before then. But that was within our lifetime that women were not included in clinical trials. And then I'm fast forwarding through a lot past COVID. November of just last year, of course, the president and his team introduced another Women's Health Initiative, the Women's Health Initiative that we're moving off of in a lot of ways right now. And now there is funding set aside, major funding set aside for women's health, a lot of innovation and hope for just generating all kinds of products that will really speak to the history of women and really to our needs moving into the future and for the future of those who are coming after us. So your purpose today, what I'm challenging every one of you all who's on board today to be thinking about is not just what can I be doing in my present capacity, whether it's as a product developer, a researcher, a clinician, someone who's working in government, someone who's a mom, who's working at home. Think about everybody who came before you and everyone who unfortunately either went through a lot of pain or died or strove so that we can be having this conversation today. It's such an honor. And so you are part of a long tradition of a legacy tradition in terms of pushing the needle forward. And I hope with all that I have in me that you will find spaces to collaborate with the leaders of the organization, with people with whom you work in your community, and reach out to others who you don't yet know to find out how you can be a part of something that will really change lives. So thank you very much for your time. I'm so excited for what's to come.
Wow. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're just so honored to have you be here, Mia, for this kickoff event and to be an active leader in this effort that is just tremendous. And I mean, I can see the Q&As just like on fire. There's tremendous expertise, background here within this group. So we are going to enable chat next time. Trust me, we will make sure that happens. And I also see a future where we do more meeting format, not webinar format, so we can see each other and really connect. We want this to be a powerful network among each other, not just the advocacy work and shaping the process. We want each other to be more empowered through this network. So with that, I think what we'd like to do is turn it over to discussion. One thing I wanted to put here in the chat box is we are doing a survey to find out what you care about and make sure that we make this network your network. We are addressing the issues you care most about. So please take time to fill that out. And then this is our website here where you can sign up and become a member. I also put that in the chat box earlier. So you've got some links there. So now let's have a discussion. Let's talk about what is of most interest to you. I just, like I said, this is just lighting up. So why don't we start off with, what is the plan to ensure that diverse voices are included from inception, that historical exclusion is avoided? Right on point, like nail on the head. Thank you so much. So Bethany or Netta or Mia, whoever would like to tackle that first question. I'm sure we all have thoughts on it, but great question.
I'll jump in quickly because I always believe it starts with you need to see it to believe it to want to be it. And it's including the folks who we are potentially creating solutions for at the table from concept, and then making sure that you have representation across the product development lifecycle, across leadership, so that you have a focus that laser focus on what problem you're solving and how you're going to solve it in an equitable manner, so it doesn't actually create inequities. From Mia's comment, for example, everybody knows about pulse oximeters. They were never designed potentially to work on people who look like myself. And we saw how that was detrimental during the pandemic. So yes, equity is a key piece. You see it in even the leadership. You see it in us being very intentional in whom we engage with and making sure all voices are represented and helping build that table, not being invited to the table, but helping to build the table from the start. And we also welcome ideas on how we can do it better and thoughts as well. So, but please, Bethany, Mia, Liz, chime in if you have other.
Yeah, Bethany, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, Nana, you said it perfectly. I love that. Building the table from the ground up. We have been very focused on making sure that what we're building and what we take to regulators and lawmakers is going to be something that's reflective of all of the voices and all of the different experiences that people have in the women's digital health industry. And I think it's so important to really, acknowledge, that we do already come from a position of disempowerment in women's health, and B, to make sure that the solutions that are being built won't exacerbate those problems, especially unintentionally, which we see a lot with digital health inequities. That's really started to come to the forefront in the last couple of years, especially since COVID. So I would say that's 100% at the forefront of our mind. I think having Mia here as well as one of our digital health equity consultants here to really help us make sure that what we are proposing and what we are hoping to take to regulators is not going to inadvertently cause disparities. That is forefront of our mind, and making sure that we are absolutely committed to inclusivity and diversity, not only within our own membership, right, but also in, for instance, the opportunities that we get to go to regulators, right, and speak before them. We're being very intentional about making sure that we're inclusive in that group, not only, from a gender, race, ethnicity perspective, but also from an experience perspective across that life cycle change for digital health.
And I couldn't add any more than what was already mentioned between Bethany and Netta, except for, and this goes to some of the comments here in the Q&A, the beautiful thing about this moment is that people are really coming to the table with respect to digital health, right? From a political standpoint, from a policy standpoint, these are conversations that are happening across both sides of the aisle and bi-chamberly, right? At least on the congressional front. And the same thing, I imagine, I'm less familiar with what happens across each and every one of the states, but we're seeing similar trends as well. This is a conversation that everyone is really at least curious about. And I think just starting with curiosity first and foremost is really a very strong place to be, because it does not make it so that conversations feel so very split and politicized, which can be truly distracting, especially when we're already dealing in a space that historically has not been valued by everyone equally. The last thing that I'll say here is, with respect to this question, is that the digital health conversation, in addition to bringing so many people to the table, will also potentially bring conversations that have been politicized into the conversation, right? So one person said, well, how do I have this conversation or introduce the most high tech or best technologies to my patients in a place where they don't even have insurance because Medicaid is not yet expanded, right? Well, that becomes a conversation that has to be a part of the digital health conversation, right? Which perhaps what I'm saying is it will open up doors. And at least that's the hope. As long as there's curiosity, as long as people are really committed to having that conversation, which is how do we really ensure that the best technologies are going to the people who need it the most? And what are those barriers, those upstream barriers that are really just keeping us away from that?
I love all those answers, 100% agree with everything. And just one other thing, just to take it even further out, is precision medicine, right? It's all about what each person needs. So everyone wins, regardless of your skin color, your ethnicity, your gender, your geographic region. If we're really going after that precision medicine model, like this is a win-win all around. And so regulators should be embracing us trying to educate them and contribute to this regulatory process. So it's like everyone wins. So with that, we've got more going on here. So I want to make sure, I'm so glad chat is enabled. So, introduce yourselves, put the questions, the comments in there. We love it. So I like this question that I'm seeing in the Q&A box about one of the biggest challenges in this digital health space is that the technology advancement is ahead of the regulatory policies. And you can read the question, but it goes on to say, how do, for female founders, and we welcome men too, but those in this space, how do we lead in that regulatory space as opposed to being penalized for leapfrogging ahead of regulations? How do we get that balance, and how are we going to be able to shift that with this new network? Bethany, I see you nodding. Do you want to take this one first?
Sure, I'm happy to. No, and it's something that I deal with right day in, day out, helping innovators, is the fact that we are oftentimes in such a gray area because, as you mentioned, right, technology is far outpacing regulation. And there's a favorite saying I've heard that says, by the time a law is passed, it's already obsolete, just because tech has already progressed so much faster than the regulations. And so because of that, I think there's a couple of things that we aim to do as well, which is right, monitoring the trajectory of regulation so that we're able to advise our members on where this likely path is going, what those regulatory initiatives might be in the end, and making sure that you can then start to develop some compliance best practices ahead of time. That way you're not, for instance, charging ahead on AI only to have, transparency regulations come down the pipeline that you're not prepared to enact and comply with. And so as a result, part of what we want to do is make sure that we're able to kind of forecast where this landscape's going. Obviously working with regulators on the pain points as well to help see if we can drive where the regulation ultimately ends up so it doesn't stifle innovation or penalize, right, those who have been early adopters of new technological practices, but also making sure that we're able to forecast that for you, and discuss compliance best practices, where we think the regulations are going, where the law is headed, and be able to give you guidance on that so that you're able to prepare as far in advance as possible before the new regulations come out. So that's something I would say, unfortunately, all the regulations that come out will, unfortunately, right, have some type of impact, but also be a bit behind the curveball. But with best practices and really kind of understanding where the digital health industry is today, we're able to kind of forecast what that might look like and help you start to implement that earlier.
I'll come from it from an FDA perspective. So I do think FDA, we're in this environment and point where they're very eager to learn and hear from the folks on the ground, from the patient perspective, the patient reported outcomes. Those are valuable data points for them to inform their decision making. I'm sure you've also heard about real world evidence and data. I was on a panel yesterday talking about this. And it's not just for the big companies, the established companies, also the small companies. And that, where you think, where does digital health come in? Well, there's all this data we're collecting or capable and could enable collecting in a more easier or efficient manner while people are doing their day jobs in their daily lives, right? Without making it burdensome, especially for women who are just, chief medical officer, chief care officer, chief whatever officer for everything, right? And we tend to forget about ourselves and in that daily grind. So I think the FDA is very open to different forms of information, different forms of data to inform their benefit risk analysis and calculations of whether a product should get to market. Is it safe and effective for that intended patient population? And are eager to hear. And you hear them around and everywhere. And what's really exciting, actually, I'm going to plug my friend and lead at FDA, Dr. Michelle Tarver, who is now the Deputy Center Director for Transformation. I think she's like the Chief Transformation Officer. Like, what a title. I love that. So it's her purview's anything and everything. And she's like a big champion and proponent of putting in policies and programs that really advance representation and lead to better health outcomes for patients. So I think there's that opportunity. And the hope is through this network, we can create those forums, we can have those discussions, we can collate this information and feedback and feed it in meaningful ways for the agencies. And I see a lot about the CMS aspect, the reimbursement aspect, the payment aspect, because sure, you can get a product to market, but if no one's going to pay for it or it's not going to be adopted, it falls short. And I know we're talking a lot about the regulation, but there's also all those unregulated products. And how do you safely navigate that space in the digital health where it's kind of gray or it's under enforcement discretion, another word you probably many are familiar with. So FDA is choosing not to provide regulatory oversight at this point because the risk doesn't rise to that level. So there's all those nuances, right? But it's exciting. And how can we take those opportunities to really kind of move the ball forward. So to that question, I think all agencies are ears and should be ears, and cannot not be ears open to hear and wanting to do better. And I think they are. They're in service, right? If we're in healthcare, you're in service. You're in it because you want to give back. If you're inside government or outside government, whatever we're doing, we're here to serve patients, and we are patients ourselves. So I think it's a great opportunity, and the momentum's there. And I know, by the way, sorry, Liz, didn't mean to cut you. There's some great questions in the questions and answer, and we can't answer. I can't answer for some reason, but we are reading them. We will collate them. So hopefully we're getting to them. Oh,
yeah, I'm responding. Yeah, I'm responding as I can, and I'm trying to juggle. There's just so much between the chat box and Q&A. But one thing, this might be a quick answer. One of the top questions was, is there a 510K cleared femtech device? Is there a list of these devices? Do you guys know?
I did put a link in the chat because I couldn't answer it in the Q&A, where FDA has a list of all the ML AI enabled devices that they've either cleared, approved, or granted. They aren't sorted out by disease or specialty area, but you can look through that. And there's over 700 and something, I believe. So it's not behind the curve, right? It's kind of maybe overdone, but it's also that balance. A lot of times, you want to use AI or digital health to enable better outcomes, to inform decision making, to help physicians do a better job and serve you better. And then there's also, how can you use it to empower and put the decision making in the patient's hands, kind of those patient decision support products as well. So yes, there is that list, but I think this is part of, if these are things that this community and this network is looking for, and what type of information, I think those are also things we can develop to serve us better.
Yeah, I think just getting the word out that there's that many. I think that there could be value in that. I think a lot of people, like lay people, don't even realize that, as well as the government folks that we're talking about.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so getting several on reimbursement and payment. Do we have comments on how we can shape reimbursement? So anyone want to tackle that one? Ned or Bethany or Mia, either one of you?
Well, I'm happy to jump in, Liz, and say that this is one of the key pain points that we experience, and I think that a lot of individuals in the women's digital health industry experience. Founders, for instance, I talk with them every day, and they say, "This is great, but I have to go, direct to consumer right now because there's no reimbursement strategy or codes even available for what I'm bringing to market." And so I think this is one of, if not the, top pain point that I have heard, and I think. As Liz mentioned, right, we'll be sending out a survey as well and would love to get your thoughts, but this may be one of the key areas that we focus on initially to start driving change and having those conversations with regulators about how we can change the reimbursement landscape, what that needs to look like, and really, how does that work, right, between public and private payers? Because I also have seen a lot of femtech founders and women's digital health founders have better reimbursement with government payers than private payers sometimes, because the policies are just so different. And I can tell you, really to date, it's been hard to get payers in the room. And I think that's one of the things that we're really going to be focused on is really targeting those agencies, targeting those payers, seeing if we can start to drive some actionable change there. Because once we can change the reimbursement policy and landscape, right, I think we're going to start to see a lot more of these women's digital health products come to market in a way that is sustainable and in a way that is going to be able to serve broader populations. So I would say, that's high on our list of topics that we are hoping to really dive into. And if anybody, has ideas on specifics or anything like that, we would of course love to hear them. But Mia, I'll turn it over to you.
No, everything you've said right there, Bethany, was spot on. It's not easy. I mean, the fact of the matter is that, our healthcare system, in terms of our reimbursement agencies, was never designed to even imagine anything quite like this, right? Which is so amazing to me. This was something, the milestone health institutions that were built in the 1960s, right? With really very clear instructions to take care of the sickest of us, and really take care of, what was needed on the grounds. But who could imagine that we'd be talking digital health, less than 50 years after that, right? And or more, just a little bit more than 50 years after that. So here we are. And so really what it is, in my estimation, is that a lot of regulators and CMS in particular is really taking their time for understandable reasons in terms of finding pathways that that really would fit the mold for digital health devices. And I do believe that people will come to the table. There's a part of it is because coalitions like this one will insist, right? And so because they must be in the service of the people, they will come to the table. And so I would just impress upon each of you, find those inroads and do so together, because that will certainly lend or yield the greatest fruit, for sure.
Yeah, and Mia, building off what you said too, I think we have to come together as well for the regulators to realize that there is such a need for change in reimbursement on women's digital health. And I don't, to be honest, I don't think that's happened yet. So I think that's part of our power, right, in this network, is coming together to show why this is needed, rather than one startup here, one startup there, right, going and saying, oh, I need this code, we need to change reimbursement policies. That's not going to get as far as, a very broad network that represents diverse voices coming together and saying, here's exactly how this is harming women's digital health and our innovations in the future. Here's, the impact it's had, and here's why we need to change the reimbursement landscape. So I think we have to come together first as well.
I couldn't have said it better. And to put, really stark numbers on it, Netta talked earlier about the fact that FDA, which really does hold the biggest key here, has approved over 700, it might even be over 800 at this point as of beginning of this year, products, digital health products, right? Or software as medical devices. There are only 7 or 8 that have been approved for payment through CMS.
That's insane.
Isn't that wild?
That's like this, and that's insane.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we got to give voice to that. Thank you, Mia. We got to give voice to that. That's insane. Unbelievable. Okay, wow. All right, the other question we're getting is about funding, and we definitely can advocate for funding. We can create funding streams around advancing women's digital health. There's all kinds of creative things that we can do, and Mia and I used to do this all the time on the Hill, where you're carving out funding streams and inserting language into bills. So that'll definitely be part of our strategy. As we start off, we want to make sure we know what you all are focused on. But the sky's the limit on what we can do with this network. So yes to everything. Okay, there's so much in the chat box. What else can we address here? Okay, I feel like there is a huge need to educate physicians, nurse practitioners. So we're talking about the other side of things on FDA cleared women's digital health innovation. So how do we address that? How do we close those gaps in consumer access?
I love that one, Katie McMillan, for asking it and putting it forward. And it also ties into Anna's comment and the consistency in the application, the adoption piece. And I think these are all pieces where there are gaps. So how can we create programming and then policies and so forth with the right folks at the table, right? Because it is that whole lifespan, total product life cycle, from concept through to commercialization, bedside, and then the learnings. I was talking about the real world data, evidence and data. How does that inform iteration and development and new models or new forms of the product? So yeah, these to me, I'm so glad we're getting all this feedback. It's like just energizing us. And Liz says yes, and it's more okay. Let's prioritize it and get some even working streams behind this to have deliverables that help move the needle here. And someone's getting a bit tired, so my apologies and thank you for your understanding.
No worries, Netta. I'm happy to jump in as well on this, because this has been something we've really been focused on at Fem Innovation, was recognizing that gap between the digital health companies that are coming out and the clinicians, right, and physicians, right, healthcare practitioners who could potentially be using these devices, but there's a lack of standards, especially for devices that are going under the FDA's enforcement discretion. And so what I've seen is a lot of, NPs and physicians don't understand which devices are clinically accurate and clinically usable in a way to meaningfully change the standard of care. And so they're not necessarily adopting or incorporating the data that's being collected by the women's digital health technology devices out there. And so I think that's something that absolutely has to be addressed. There have been studies, for instance, in femtech that show this is a huge problem. One of the studies, for instance, showed that 85% of the femtech apps that are on the market are actually not meeting clinical quality thresholds. And I think part of that too is the fact that, there aren't standards around that. And a lot of clinicians, whenever it comes to a risk-benefit profile, they potentially see using these new types of innovations as a risk when they're not necessarily adopted yet as the standard of care. And so I think those are conversations that we need to be having. We've had them at Fem Innovation, really at the individual clinician and NP perspective, through training and that type of thing. But really, I think to make some substantial change, this has to be brought to kind of the wider regulatory audience as well, to see what policies there might be that are inhibiting adoption from clinicians and NPs and other types of healthcare practitioners. And also making sure that the organizations that are out there, there's a lot of industry organizations for clinicians. And it's really interesting to me because when I first came into this space, I really thought they would all be accepting of innovation. And what I found is that a lot of the key ones, especially in women's healthcare, are not necessarily, accepting of innovation at all. And so even when we try to approach them, right, it's much more of a, well, that's not the organization to approach if you're trying to do something innovative. And so I think, again, having to come together and really change that broader discussion at a higher level is really what we need on the clinician side as well.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think, I actually just got back from New York City where I participated in a couple different women's health events, and there was tremendous power in just sort of mobilizing the consumer world, so yes, government's important here, but also there's amazing energy right now around women's health and self-empowerment, right? And self-advocacy. So I think something else we could do is also make sure that we're getting the word out about all the innovation that is happening, what is available, this 800 whatever FDA approved options for women. I think that could be something this network does too. And by amplifying that with media, social media, et cetera, that is going to wake up, obviously, Congress and the regulatory side as well. So I feel like both could be very helpful in really advancing this field. So I just wanted to add that there's a really good comment in here about applying the law consistently, and that according to ACA, lactation consultation should be no out of pocket, but somehow this seems a squishy area for payers, and contraception should not require out of pocket. But how does this get applied to over the counter now that we've got the pill? And person Anna says it's not really a question, but it's a comment. But I think it's a really important comment. Something that we need to do is not just sort of shape upcoming regulations, but what's happening now and how is that being implemented? And if it's implemented inconsistently, how is that impacting the health of women? I think that's a really good issue for us to take on, and would love to hear from others what you guys think about that.
No, I agree. The consistency. Even when I was at the agency, there was a lot of initiative and work on how we are consistent in our decision making, or inconsistent. You can only apply consistency so far, but I 100% agree. And I really think this really speaks to the market access piece, which involves the adoption, right, and the payment piece. And then how does it fit into the clinical workflow? And what pain points? So I would love to hear from more. I'm not a market access reimbursement expert, and I know it's a whole different language, but it sounds like there's a need here to have some very refined dialogue. I do know that, especially for the remote monitoring piece and the wearables aspect, even if you're not tied to a hardware, so if you're just purely a software as a medical device, CMS will not reimburse for that. Your software has to be tied to a hardware of some sort. So if it's a blood pressure cuff or whatever, I'm just coming up with an example. But those are also kind of misinformations or just not knowing, like to your point, Liz, of even just the number of products that have been rightfully gone through the FDA pathway. So it does sound like there's great dialogue, and then an outcome here, best practices white paper or recommendations that could go to different avenues, but then learnings for founders and innovators in this space as well. So yeah, the consistency, I mean, all of these, I'm like, God, you know, this is wonderful. So thank you so much for the engagement. It's phenomenal. And then there's also another point from, I think, about not recreating the wheel, because and another piece is there are a lot of other groups and avenues working in this space, right? So if we can be a convener and bring those pools of folks working there, we don't believe in recreating the wheel, because there's the power of us, and if we can amplify and elevate other voices who are doing good here, that's better. And if we can convene and just make connections for folks to be able to collaborate. So absolutely welcome other recommendations in terms of if there are groups that you're familiar with and we're not as familiar with, please share those as well, because we'd love to invite them to partake.
Yeah, I'm seeing some comments on that. We love partnerships, strategic alliances, collaboration. We're inclusive. We love it. So and we don't know everything. So we want, this network is your network. So please give us those ideas of groups we can work with, people to get involved, speaker ideas. Mia was phenomenal today. Could not think of a better person to kick things off with. So I think that we're just a couple minutes left. I don't know if any of my colleagues here have anything you want to address. I will work on coming up with one more question here, but if there's any topic you want to make sure we cover, now would be a good time to do that.
There's a comment in here, maybe Mia, I throw it to you. It says, "Where will there be a women's health advocacy element to this program?"
Yeah, I was just reading that question. There absolutely has to be, and I'm completely volunteering the team to say yes. But so there we go. Yes, there will be such an element for sure.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm really excited. I see Cara Tannenbaum is on. We're together at CDRH. So thanks for joining it. And that's the beauty of that. Like, we're all in our little, avenues or whatever we're doing. But if we can all rise up, hey, Cara, and get together and work on something that we're passionate about. And that's the goal. I think you do better work when you're passionate and you care about it. So that's this forum in terms of creating this for all of us.
And you're getting lots of props, Netta, for bringing your daughter on, by the way. Lots of support, lots of props for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. But you know what? We've all done it, right? And sometimes it's cats and dogs.
Just did it yesterday or Monday, one of those for sure.
There you go. So kudos to all of you, and I appreciate your welcoming her.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's so much in here. I think that at this point, I want to make sure people are filling out our survey. It's a Google form. It'll take you, I don't know, 3 minutes. It's not that long, but it's enough to get us going and make sure that we're focusing on the areas you care most about. So I think what we'll do from here, we'll collect that information. We'll circle back with you. Please make sure you join. And we are going to be doing more events like this. I think a lot of it is going to start out online because we're all over the country and it's an easier way to communicate. So we will be circling back as we read through what you send us to give direction to this. We want to do things like meetings like this where we can network with each other, make sure the chat box works from the very beginning, and then have a more meeting format where we can see each other, really engage. We want to set up meetings with regulators, with members of Congress. We want to work on letters where we bring together very cogent explanations of how different regulations are impacting the health of women through digital health, as well as regulation has yet to be introduced. We want to shape it before that happens. So there'll be opportunities to do meetings. There'll be opportunities to contribute to letters. And then congressional briefings are also a very impactful way to educate. And then on social media, please follow us on social media at Women's Digital Health Network. And let's amplify and things that you're working on. We want to make sure we're following you, we're connecting with you. This network is all about empowerment, empowering each other, amplifying each other, and really elevating this issue of women's digital health. So with that, we'd love to pass to my colleagues for some final words, and then we'll wrap up. Bethany,
I'll just echo what you said, Liz. This is an initiative that we really hope is going to move the mark on women's digital health policy in a way that hasn't been done before, really by bringing together the collective voice to drive meaningful change and drive public-private partnerships in this area. It's so needed. I've seen it work in other industries quite effectively. I was involved with it a bit in the Internet of Medical Things industry a couple of years ago as well, and really trying to bring together those diverse voices to understand and move legislation forward. So I think this has tremendous potential. I always say, if not now, if we're not going to do it now, whenever the White House is committing money to women's health and this has reached national attention, when are we going to do it? And I think this is really the time for us to come together and drive this action and do so in a way where we're able to help ensure that we're not going to create more disparities than what already exists. And really, this is our industry, and so we need to make the most of it and make sure really that we are doing justice, to the individuals who use the women's digital health products as well.
I'll jump in and then let me take it home. Or you want? Yeah. So first of all, thank you. Yes. Ditto everyone. And it is like do more to accelerate progress, right? And we are our own best advocates and our own best knowers of our health and what we want for us. And that's the goal here. And we also like to have fun while we do it. So we want to make this fun, enjoyable. There was a question about platform for discussion. Someone put in there, is Slack going to be used? And that, I think, is one of our questions in the survey. How would you like to engage? What is most meaningful? We don't want to create more places that you have to go. Everyone's busy and probably over networked or over plugged in. So we're trying to streamline and figure that out. And hence we have a question there. So we welcome your input there. But I mean, I can't say anything anymore. It's exciting. It's a pleasure and honor to be working with all of you in this opportunity. So thank you, and looking forward to what we can all achieve together. Mia?
Certainly looking forward to what we can all achieve together, and also to echo Bethany's words, doing justice to those who are really very deserving of the greatest technology of our time, and between everyone here and those who will hopefully join the effort, this is it, right? And so I'm really very moved by everyone's questions, everyone's intentional presence, and also the fact that there are people from what I'm understanding from so many different places within not just the US, but across the world. So thank you so much for being here. And I very much look forward to 30 years from now saying, I remember when. And these will become normalized conversations for 21st century medicine.
Awesome. All right. We have kicked off our first event, our first call with this Women's Digital Health Network. Please join. Please fill out that survey, and we will circle back with you. Have a great day.